7 p.m., January 28th. Study session for the Waverly City Council is now in session. Roll call, please.
Bergen.
Here.
Riekow.
Here.
McKenzie.
Here.
Rafi. Here. Scherer.
Present.
Waldstein. Here. And Kangas is absent.
Very good. Welcome back, Will, Rainey, for your last meeting. We'll look for some constructive words from you at the end of the meeting.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Next item is the approval of the agenda as presented. Entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Agenda as presented is approved. Approval of the minutes from the January 7th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Entertain a motion.
I will move approval of the minutes for January 7th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Council discussion.
So on the regular business, item number 3, which was the resolution denying an appeal to affirm the staff's decision, it says motion passed. That should actually be motion failed.
No, actually, yes, that's correct. Sorry.
Okay.
Good catch, Brian. It's confusing. Yeah.
Remind me, Brian, where are we on the, what are you looking at exactly?
So we are approving the minutes. I'm looking at the regular business and then the third item.
Third item, okay. Got it.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Approval of the minutes for January 7th are approved. Next item, public comments for any item not on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment session and open the study session calendar with an update on the W. We're privileged to have Sheila here from the W to make that presentation, so it's all yours.
All right. Okay. Thanks for having me again. Doesn't seem like it's been a year since we've been here, but it certainly has. So feel free to ask any questions along the way. I am just going to do an update, some new things that are going on in the W, update on some membership, where we're at after 10 years, and a few 10-year numbers. I know I did a few of those last year as well. But we did celebrate our 10-year anniversary kind of all year. So we had some fun things going on as related to our 10-year anniversary. So I'm starting with commitments, which is part of the agreement with the city and Wartburg College. And they haven't changed, obviously, but just to remind everybody what our commitments are as a part of this agreement with the city of Waverly. Current membership numbers. As some averages, average units, that's actually a number. It could have, like, when I say units, that means a unit of 1 could have 5 family members in it. A unit of 1 could have 1 family member in it. So that's kind of how we measure our revenue stream. It's a better indicator for me than total number of members, just because that's what drives our revenue. So average units over the 10-year time frame. You can see how they've adjusted and shifted a little bit. Last year, on an average, we were a little bit lower. Average members, we were about the same as the prior year. In the member high, though, we were a little bit higher. We peaked out at 3,077. That very last column where it says current, that's not an average, that's actually current. So right now we're at about 1,300, a little over 1,300. And the member high, which normally we peak in February, this year we are already at 3,266. So that's encouraging. Hopefully we'll have, that either means people joined quicker or we'll have more people joining in February. But that's a great number for us. That's the highest we've ever been. So I hope that, our averages indicate that next year for us. Our prices haven't changed, although our mix has. You'll notice our senior population, which is a population we were focusing on because of the time frame that we know they can be in the building. We knew we had opportunity there. You'll see that that is now 32% of our membership, overall membership, and you'll see later in the presentation how we have tailored some of our programming to accommodate those seniors being in our building. We have not raised our prices in the last 10 years. That's something that obviously will always be on the table, but for now, we've been able to hold those prices, those rates down. Usage, I did just a quick 4-year usage. Average check-ins, you'll see what those are. 18, 19, as we get into these January, February timeframes, we have obviously higher usage in these months, so that average of 389 will continue to go up. Total check-ins for the year, average high check-ins for the days, for a day at a time, and guest passes that we've sold during those years. And these don't include students. So, you know, the check-ins, if they're coming in for an athletic event, they're not going to check in. Or I'm sorry, for an athletic practice, they're not going to check in. So these are just mostly members, community members that are coming and using the facility. I also did a quick check just for the month of January because we've been so busy this month because of school being out. For the weekend of January 5th and 6th, we had 802 people check in and 119 guest passes sold. For that week, we had 1,357 people check in, 96 guest passes. The weekend of January 12th and 13th, 835 members checked in for those 2 days, and we sold 147 guest passes. So we've been busy. It's been great having everybody in the facility. Obviously, it creates some space issues occasionally, but it's great to see everybody in using the facility. After 10 years, community rec participants, these are just some facts, some fun facts we threw out for everybody because it was 10 years in the building. 24,000 community rec participants over that time period. I think one of the fun things about these facts is that we've had 404 continuous members for those 10 years, people that have not canceled their membership over that time frame. And 163, that's the unit piece of it. So 404 people have not canceled since we opened the building. Another fun fact, we've been open 55,120 hours. It's a lot of hours. Group fitness. I'd like to highlight some of the things we're doing new here and some of the things that we are doing for our senior population that the numbers have been increasing. We offer over 100 classes, and that's up from where we've been in the past. That's weekly. So we may have, so that equates to like we have 3 yoga classes, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time frame. I count that as 3, just so you know how we're counting those. We continue to have programming at Waverly Health Center in their warm pool there. We regularly introduce new programming. We're always looking for something new and exciting, something that people would be interested in joining us for. We have senior-specific programming. We have over 30 instructors. Obviously, majority of those are part-time, very part-time in some cases. And it also provides some hands-on training for our students and our interns to get involved in some of those classes. Some of them actually lead some of those classes for us. This is a breakdown. I know last year I brought you our whole master schedule, and it was very difficult to read, so I tried to break it down a little bit this year so you could see kind of a shift in how we shift throughout the day as far as what classes we offer. So we start our early morning classes with maybe some of our higher intensity classes for those people who want to get a good workout before they go to work. And then we shift towards the morning, we shift into some maybe Tai Chi, which is a little bit more tailored towards our older population. Also have like our senior body toning. It's more of our senior classes in that mid-morning time frame. So it's just a picture of one of our classes. This is a 9 o'clock class, I believe, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I could have that wrong, but I think that's what that one is. Then we have kind of a mid-morning schedule, and again, this is very popular with our stay-at-home individuals or people who work third shift. These people can come in and join our classes during this time frame, as well as some of our senior population. Afternoon classes, and then we have our evening class schedule as well. Some of the new classes we're offering, body and balance. We have no floor yoga. We have Forever Strong. Those are some of the ones that we've introduced just recently since Tasha has joined us. People ask a lot of times, what is no-floor yoga? And they think it's a very easy, sitting in the chair type of a class. That's not necessarily true, but it is tailored towards people who have a harder time getting on the floor or getting back up off the floor. So I have a couple of pictures to show you. This is what it looks like. Chair is there for reinforcement or just for your balance if you need it. You don't have to use that chair, but for a lot of people, that's what they need just to have in front of them just in case they would need to grab that. So just some pictures that were taken this morning in one of the classes. Continuing on with new classes, we have a new one that's called Rest and Recovery. This is great for people who maybe have some spots on their body that really need a little bit more working on. John is our instructor for that, and he will tailor to what you need to have done, whether it's being a foam roller or individual, just small pieces of equipment that you can rub into muscle areas that you need some recovery from. So John's very good at individualizing that class for us. That's been very popular. And we also have BYOB, and it's not bring your own bottle. Fortunately, it's bring your own baby. So we wanted to incorporate, Tasha's very big on having something that the moms or dads can come and bring their kids and interact with their kids while they're exercising. So that was one that Tasha developed. And we have a picture of her and her young one actually doing that class. So. Another class that we introduced about a year ago that's gaining in popularity is Delay the Disease program. And this is not a program that we developed on our own, but we partnered with somebody who actually developed this program. I believe they're out of Ohio. And this has grown in popularity for Parkinson's individuals, and it's an opportunity for them to come in and work specifically on things that they maybe need to work on, whether it's their legs or their hands. Everybody has a little bit different needs, and so it's very individualized to the individual coming in needing that support, and it's also a great way for them to interact with people who are also suffering or going through the same thing that they are. So, from a social perspective, it's a great thing too. A few pictures of some of those individuals with what they're doing in classes, some handwork, and we also even incorporate the wall a little bit for reaching, and it's a great way to change it up for those individuals so it's not the same thing all the time. We've had some great success with that, and some people that even come back and say that their doctors are amazed at what they can do after coming to this class on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with us. So. Coming soon, some new ones coming as well. We have something called Breakfast Break, and that's going to be a Saturday class, and that's based on some balance classes. It's going to be some educational sessions as well as some interacting with the participants. One called Shape Up, and that's going to be for our youth to come in and join us and have, I think, a 6 or an 8 week session. I think it's on Saturdays as well, maybe Fridays. Something called Turn Up Yoga, so if you're into headstands, handstands, that might be a new yoga for you to try. And we also had, last year we had just a kind of what we call pop-up class. It's a popular class that maybe we don't instruct on a regular basis, but we have guest instructors come in, and that's a pound class. So it's using music and drums actually to do some exercising. So we'll do that again this year as well. Moving on to community recreation, this year we saw huge growths in our flag football program, and that's intentional. With some of the individuals not wanting to do pads at an older age, we really grew our program and made it into a flag football program. We also invited Clarksville, New Hampton, and Denver to bring their teams to have some good competition, even if they aren't fully padded in 5th and 6th grade. So we tried to make it still be a sport that it was very competitive, just not with the pads, shoulder pads and helmets on at that age. So next year, we're hoping to have a couple of additional schools or surrounding communities join us for that as well. Over 350 summer rec participants. We had the largest soccer and tennis we've had. 12 adult rec volleyball teams, and that's as high as we've had in the last 10 years. So again, 12 this year, and increased participation in our rock climbing program, which we continue to push a little bit. People seem to enjoy it once they actually get up on the wall. It looks kind of intimidating, but people do enjoy it. And that's actually my grandson climbing the wall. Community rec, thriving. We have a thriving pickleball league, and that's not. We have a league through our community rec, but we also have a lot of our seniors, not even just seniors, just a large population that come and use pickleball nets, the courts on a regular basis. And I was asked to add a third court this week, so actually last week. So we'll try to throw in another court for them because it is very popular. Football 101, we have a new, this year, disc golf, baseball, softball skills. We know that the programming in Shell Rock has really gained some momentum, and we have less people participating in our program. So what we're going to do this year is change it to be more of a skill-driven class. So not just playing the game, but let's teach the kids really the skills and what they need for softball and baseball. And continue with our karate, and the adult and youth programs continue to be popular. Aquatics, continue to have our swim team with record enrollment. That's for youth. We have year-round swimming lessons, obviously. Again, over 850 people participating. Continue to have our CPR, WSI, LGI classes. We extend our swim pool hours during early outs, days like today, also during the holiday season, so that we can accommodate families that are in town and want to swim outside of our normal, what we have normally for hours. And as always, we have dedicated lap swim time, and year-round exercise programming in that area. Some recent things that we do outside of the W that our staff participates in. We were part of the Waverly High School Health and Safety Day. That was something new for the school this year, and so we participated. We did some just general exercises in one area, and we had yoga in the other. We participated with the Nestle Health Fair, Community Health Fair. We're working on again. This will be our 12th annual. We just started working on that again. Part of the Waffle Group, who is currently working with the Healthy Hometowns, which I know they'll eventually come and ask for a few things, or at least they're doing some investigating as far as walkability in town, which I know we've done before, but again, taking a look at that. And we participate in the United Way summer programming as well. And this is just a picture of the high school with how many people we had interested in the yoga that day. Most of the students said that they enjoyed that a great deal. Community impacting events. Most of these are just repeats. We've been doing these for the last 10 years. Just kind of reminders, the big indoor track meets that we have attract more than 5,000 athletes. We have 5 dates that will have indoor track meets for high school alone. Volleyball events, we had a big event in the building last weekend, basketball as well. We continue to have Kids Zone Monday, Wednesday, Friday for basically 5 and under is what it's targeted towards. People can come in for $1, bring their kids in and play in the fun zone. If they're members, obviously it's just they're checking in that day. And then once a month we try to have a day where they can go in the pool, where it's not busy with other people. And so if they're younger, it's not very intimidating. That's pretty much everybody 5 and under is in the pool with their parents. Continue to have after prom venue. I think if we had more dates to offer, we'd have more proms. They seem to always pick the same dates, and we wish they'd spread it out a little bit. Clinics, we have a variety of those in the building as well. Pool parties, we had over 100 of them. I was thinking about that. I'm like, that's 2 per weekend, but we a lot of times have 4 and 5 pool parties in a weekend. Just move them in and clean up and move the next one in. We continue to host Boy Scouts, 4-H groups, a large variety of groups that come in and just want to use some space. Wellness days, we have people calling from over an hour away that they'll travel to come in and do a wellness day with us. A lot of those are in the spring, but they are already calling to reserve their space and their times. DARE programs, we continue to have those in the building as well. Dyke New Hartford, AP, those individuals come on a regular basis to the facility. And we continue to host the early out. We have a lot of kids in the building. Today was no exception. A lot of young people burning off some steam, and for the most part, it's great to have them in the building. They're very respectful of the space, and it's good to see them interacting on that center court. It's full. W's are some of the things that we do with the school, just kind of as a reminder. I know our community rec programming, we still expand into those areas. The middle school, we have our volleyball program, and I think it's Carrie, we have our soccer during this time of year because we are so busy in the W. But in kind of help them out as well, we do some things for them as well. And I just wanted to, kind of share those things too. So they come in and do their wellness day in our facility. We also had the Lead Center students in this year. We allow the tennis team to come in and hit. A lot of times on Sunday nights we have the high school teams coming in and hitting. We had the marching band in there in December. We've had color guard in on the track, allowing them to come in and just use the space when they need it for the competitions or whatever they're doing. We also host their DARE program as well, their graduation event. And these are things that we just do them. I mean, we don't charge for them. So this is just our way of giving back to our community with those events in our high schools and actually all of our middle school as well. And then moving on to our triathlon. This is our 8th year. Heather, who's in the audience with me, works very hard to grow this event, and she's done a great job, and there's not any exception again this year. We have over 150 registered for the event already, and that's quite a few considering May 4th can be pretty crappy weather, and some people will wait until the last minute to register. So to have 150 registered already, that's quite a ways ahead of where we were probably at this time last year. Last year, we had Thompson Shoes join us as a title sponsor, so we're excited to have that be a local sponsor for us. And we have over half of the participants that travel for over 100 miles to come to this community for that. So hopefully we're bringing in, some revenue for our restaurants and our hotels with this event. We also, in conjunction with that, we have a tri-swim clinic. We also have a 12-week class that prepares people if they would like to do the triathlon and haven't done it, or even if you are a seasoned triathlete, to kind of get you back in shape and ready to go. That starts, I believe, in February. And last year we had 225 registered participants for the event. Actually, I think we had a few more, and I think that maybe is how many actually did the event that year.
I hate to interrupt the flow, but just a question. How far is the farthest distance somebody has traveled to come to the triathlon event? I'm just curious.
And we have people that have 2 or 3 years ago, we actually had a gentleman who was in the service, and he was in between. He was being I think he was going to be redeployed. He was just traveling through. So he just looked up triathlons, and he found us and it worked out timing-wise that he could do it on his way through. And so we have people that do that too, that was very random. But we have regularly from Colorado, I know, and Wisconsin, Illinois, surrounding states primarily. This is our logo this year. And this is just a picture of last year's event. So people ask, how does that happen in the pool? This kind of gives you a little diagram of what they actually do in the pool. It gets a little fuller, a little busier in there. Has more people get in the pool, but some of your first swimmers are going to be in and out of the pool, the 6 lanes in 3.5 minutes. Something like that. So we have some really fast swimmers in and out of there. And then some will take 15 minutes. I mean, that's just...
15 days.
But, the fact that it's in the pool, controlled environment, that's inviting for a lot of people that are afraid of that open water swim. So this is a place that they know, honestly, if you had to, you could touch the majority of the way and walk it if you had to. But, just to get the fear of getting that swim in, that helps a lot, being in the swimming pool. So. And then our summer activities, and these are the same that I presented before, but we continue to do them, so I included them in the PowerPoint this time, and that's what we do in the summer. In the wintertime, we have a lot of other things going on, but then we fill it in the summer as well. So that is my update.
Very good.
Anybody have questions for me?
Questions, comments from the council for Sheila?
So Sheila, the city has ended its annual subsidy to the W. How has that impacted the W? Has this been a negative, or have you been able to roll past that?
Having membership being up helps. That's difficult to answer, primarily because athletics is part of what we do as well. So, how much of an athletic impact as far as, what would we had to have anyway for the building for the athletics? It's hard to separate that from just what would be community only or just added because of our community. We continue to control our costs. That's where we really, do our due diligence and our best to, control that. But definitely the membership is a driver for us, and that's very much needed for us to continue to operate.
What I wanted you to tell us was that ending the subsidy has not crippled your programming.
Well, I'd like to say it hasn't helped, because it hasn't. Obviously, when you lose $600,000 a year, there is a significant impact. There was planning for that, but I also feel like they felt like membership might be higher than we are already, now. So, yeah, it's a definite impact. It's something we're committed to, and we'll continue to have open, and we'll continue to commit to whatever we have to do to make that happen.
I think it's a pretty unique program, I'll just say. Certainly we can see all the benefits to the community from the things that you've listed here, but I'll also say from the college's perspective, I've visited a lot of campuses, and I've seen a lot of athletic centers or wellness centers. And even those that may come close to looking as nice as ours, most of the time when you walk through them, they're empty. There's hardly anybody in them. And that's because there isn't the community partnership. And so I think it's just, it just is great that we have this partnership. And yes, of course, our students, the Wartburg students and the student athletes use it. But we really are probably maximizing our use. Sometimes we can't even find the time and space for what all we want to do. And so I think that's, wonderful for the community, and it's also wonderful for the college, because when we're giving tours for prospective students or other visitors, through that facility, it's not a beautiful facility that's empty, which is what you see at a lot of other places. It's being used, and it's always great to be able to say, yes, this is a community college partnership.
It is. We thoroughly enjoy being able to say that. And I would also say that there isn't probably a week that goes by that I don't have somebody from the outside that comments about how lucky we are as a community to have this. Mm-hmm. And that's at least weekly that I hear that from people who are not from here or just in the building for whatever reason, utilizing the facility. And, you talk about space. This Saturday we had a swim clinic in the pool. We had swimming lessons. We had an aqua class, and we had Darren Siefkin in with a paddle fest, and that was all in the morning in the pool. So this person schedules it that tight to get everything in. But it is a great facility, and we want to use every ounce of space we have in that building. And yeah, this time of year is tough to schedule, but you'd be amazed how much we can find, how much we can get in the building, and what spaces we can get creative with to utilize the space.
And you said that you haven't raised rates in the last 10 years, or?
We have not.
That's amazing.
How long do you think you're going to be able to maintain that trend?
It's a good question, Brian.
I pride myself in asking hard questions.
Honestly, I feel like probably in the next year we'll have to take a serious look at it. I looked at the Sportsplex again just to see what they've done, and they raised rates again this year. They're equal to us in a lot of cases and have passed us in some. I don't want to price it to the point, it's important that we don't price it to the point where people are no longer can afford to come to the building, but I also think that 10 years at one rate is probably as long as we can probably go back. So how much it would be raised, that's remains to be seen yet, but we'll definitely take a look at it, and I'll let Rich make that ultimate decision. So. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you, Sheila. And I was privileged to take a full-blown tour of that facility a few months ago, and there's a lot of corners in there that I didn't know that even existed. And I'm amazed that you can, the staff that you have assembled that takes care of all of this. It's, your leadership and the staff has a lot to do with holding the membership and all these programs. So it's a definite asset to the community.
Thank you, and I would agree with that staffing comment. We have a great staff, a staff that works very well together, and it makes it a lot easier for me to do what I need to do when you have a staff that works together like that. So Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we will now move on to continuation of the January 26th budget session. And I'll turn it over to James to lead us, get us in the mood, or whatever it takes there.
Turn the lights down low if you want. It's not going to help. Doesn't make the numbers look any better, I'm going to tell you right now. So because 7 hours was not enough Saturday, we wanted to bring you a little more tonight. I don't know how much council wants to go through tonight, honestly, with the weather and the chill. I mean, we're here, so we might as well do something.
Yeah.
But I know we have a full day on the 9th as well. I will say I don't want to necessarily get any enterprise funds tonight because I think it's going to be a good discussion to have. I'd like you nice and fresh for that. So I think the 9th that morning, we'll jump into that. But as far as the other items, we kind of left off at TIF. And before we go tonight, we'll fire up the projector and put everything on the bigger screen. It's better, but it's not as good. I've got printouts that are much easier to read than what we tried to do with the big spreadsheet Saturday. So I want to lock down kind of where we think we're heading into that so we can get spear with our hearings coming and get that fine-tuned. But yeah, if you find your tab, not Ray, just your tab, Unified TIF would be the first thing we'll jump into.
Got to be a gray section, right?
It is gray.
Right after the salmon colored.
Or slate, or whatever you want to call it, it's right there. So I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to walk through kind of our Unified TIF, what we certify, why we do it, kind of where we are, I think that'll be helpful.
Everybody on their page? Yep. Okay. The revenues, each year, by December 1st, we have to certify to the auditor what we want for our TIF district for the next fiscal year. And what we have certified there is what we actually need to pay off our debt for the year. You could, if you requested everything that you could get from the TIF district, we could get $2.2 million. We're requesting $1.3 million to cover our bonds for the year. And then for the other part of it, you have your tax rebates and then your bond issues that we're paying off.
They really don't want you to just accumulate a fund balance to speak of in TIF. That's kind of some of the changes they've started making in the laws in the past number of years. There are communities that were taking all they could out of TIF, socking it away, doing projects that weren't necessarily maybe in the plans, and it really forced the state to tighten down on that. So we certify what we need, no more, no less, and that's kind of where we sit on it. So it's not a lot here as far as what we're doing. We legally do what we can do, and then the rest of it is as she said, we have the tax rebates have been done. If you look at the next page, that shows you the tax rebates. We're down to just a couple of them right now. We have the rest of Carmen Flavors, and that was one of two, I think, that were there. The other one never did materialize. And then the hotel group, were in the third or the fourth on that, so it's just one more year after this year with that group.
Is Carmi still on track to meet those rebate requirements?
The one that's there is a property tax. As long as they pay their property tax, they get it.
Okay.
So I don't know if you have any questions otherwise on that particular TIF fund in itself.
So James, you said we certify what we do with TIF. What's the process for that? What do we have to do?
We certify to the state the amount we need to repay the debt that is in TIF. So when we take out debt, we use TIF funds to pay for it. The Parkway is an example. Part of that is paid for with TIF funding because it is in the district. We only certify enough to pay the bonds. We don't certify extra. We don't sock it away. They really don't want you doing that.
Right.
I don't know if some communities still are. I wouldn't advise it. But that's what we do, is only what we need. And so there's a lot more we could take if we had other projects to pay for it. But then again, that also reduces our general fund, and it takes it away from the schools, the county, Hawkeye Community College as well. So, you got to balance that. And so what we've done is every time we look at a project that we're going to sell and bonds for and possibly pay back TIF, that's why Bill schedules the meetings with those entities, let them know what we're doing to make sure we're not stretching too far, but we only take what we need to take and not the entire amount, so.
Can you remind me, James, what are the bonds that we're paying off? One is the Parkway, you said.
Well, we jump into debt service, little pink tab. And that is, let's call that marigold color.
You're pretty good at that.
I do okay. A lot of budget books we've had, various colors. The second page in will show you the different bonds that we have still outstanding, and it will say TIF in bold letters or lost or something specific that really outlines what it's for. So the 2018 A's, which are the Parkway TIF, that's in there. We still have, I think that may be the bulk of it actually.
2011.
4th Street.
There's a
Yep, that's right.
4th Street.
Go back. 4th Street Southwest 2011s, and we have only one more year after this one of that. And then we have the 2014 A GO. And then the 2015 B is the final one also. So if you look at the other 2015 B, that's a sales tax increment financing, sales TIF. That's the next gray page that we would look at, but those are the 4 that are part of that TIF calculation.
Question on the cash balance. So there is funds sitting in this account that haven't been allocated.
Correct.
Would something like streetscape or something along that lines fit with that, or is there a reason we want to carry a balance?
Well, lately we've been kind of carrying a balance just because if we have another bond like we're doing this year, for instance, there's a 2019 bond in here, and it's using part of that ending fund balance for bond payment that we would pay for the fiscal year. So we would have that. And I've only left that because we've utilized that. So it's kind of beneficial, and it's not a huge amount.
Because the kicker is, if there is a project we wanted to do, say Wood Streetscape for $240,000, we'd have to borrow it first, then use that to pay it back. And so we have to take the debt on first, where we can use the TIF to pay it. We can't just apply the money to it and say it's a project, we're going to throw a TIF at it. That used to be the case. There was a lot of that going on. It got real ugly. They've trimmed that out now, that this is kind of the streamlined version of how you do it. I mean, there's other nuances in there. I know we're going to do a study session just on TIF in itself at some point in time. But right now, we're utilizing what we have in the past. I don't think we have any TIF going forward that we're going to add to. We're just sitting status quo this year with it. So what you're seeing is what we've done, what we need to pay off what we've done. And that's where we've left it.
So on one side, it wouldn't help our capacity issue that we're wrestling with, but it could allow us to drop the levy, whatever, if we would drop this down.
Right. So if we borrowed $300,000, you could drop the levy, that $30,000 payment. That would be the difference on a 10-year bond, and use TIF to pay for it.
How much would that be? What's your rule of thumb always?
For debt, it's $100,000 payment is about a quarter.
Yeah.
So $1 million over 10 years is about a quarter on the debt levy. So you still have to borrow it to go and get it. And so it's a capacity issue a little bit to end up doing that. So we try to factor that in. I talked to Jennifer about it, and we look at what we can and can't borrow and how much it is. And certain things are capacity issues and certain things aren't. And it's kind of the mix. So we only use TIF when it's kind of applicable. It's pretty regulated anymore. We don't want to get jammed up like other cities we won't mention. Corville.
What happens when they get jammed up? I mean, not that I think we should consider this, but I'm just curious.
Well, you get to be the poster child for why TIF law changes. Nobody likes you for that. It's not very good.
Yeah, okay.
And to go back, this all started with a Von Mauer, if you can believe it, stealing one from the other, and just it got nasty, and it was just ridiculous. So it's that whole Iowa City, Coralville corridor. So that's where a lot of the recent stuff started in. And then TIF in general had been looked at and used, and yeah. You're going to say something, Mike? I see it on your face. What do you got?
No, I've been on council for over 3 years, and I'm still getting educated about all this stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, are there lots of financial considerations that are governed by the state? The state tells us what we can and cannot do.
To an extent, and some of it, a lot of times, you go to debt, it's federal. You have what your limitations are from how you have to spend your money, how soon you have to spend it, issues if you don't spend it, arbitrage problems. I mean, it's a lot of it's federal, and the state has their own twist on it that kind of trims it down even more. But yeah, it's complicated. That's why we have like a Spirit Financial or someone to help guide that process when we do debt issues. And our biggest thing is watch our capacity and try to balance the impact on taxes when you do debt like you can. So.
Okay.
If we should have the opportunity to purchase some property for expansion of a business park or industrial park, are there funds in TIF to assist with that?
Nope. You'd have to borrow it. It'd have to be placed in the TIF first, and then borrow it to utilize, and then pay it back with TIF. Okay. So we'd have to front it with debt to get a hold of that.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, other questions on TIF to move forward?
I'm just going to say, I think one of the reasons why there are more strings attached to some of this, particularly TIF, is because there was a lot of games being played with it, and you know, things were being done that were outside the original intent of TIF financing, and when that happens, then you end up having a lot more regulations, people looking over your shoulder, and rules on what you can and cannot do, so that those kinds of games aren't being played. So, you know, in the end, it's probably okay that we do have those rules, because they make everybody play by the same rules, and they keep everybody, you know, honest, and keep everything on the up and up. So I think that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
I agree. You know, it was always very simple. TIF was for infrastructure to help advance business parks. Then it became incentives to bring businesses in, and all these other things are starting to blow up and get very substantial, and they kind of tried to bring that back a little bit. So, yeah, we've not really done a lot of that. We've tried to stay pretty straight and narrow on this. But God knows if we can find a loophole, though, we will. I mean, that's the name of the game until they close it. Let's find that loophole. All right, well, then we'll jump ahead to the cable TV franchise. Again, this is fairly simple. We passed the 5% franchise fee early in the year.
What color are we on now?
Same color.
Same color, 2 pages later.
We're still in the slate. The aircraft steel color, whatever you want to call it. Gunmetal. I like that gunmetal. It's very aggressive. It's very aggressive, gunmetal. So we have our revenues to 5% franchise fee, and we use that for our internet, our programming costs, our YouTube streaming, for Spinutech, maintaining some of our website, and that's, like I said, it spells it out right there. It's kind of what we have. It's really for what we're doing in this room, so the public can watch and look at it, and then the other half of that, I think, goes to our general fund of the 5%. Is there anything else you'd add, Tab, to what we have here?
The minor equipment is a couple small pieces, about $1,500 each, of some equipment that's old that we need to replace. So that's what that will be. And just an FYI, we were not cable casting for about the first 20 minutes of the meeting tonight. We are now. A automatic switch at Wartburg didn't happen, and the Wartburg staff at Wartburg turned it on for us manually. So we are on live now. We were always on YouTube and recording to be repeated.
It's good. I didn't want to repeat all that, so I'm glad it's out there. This is important stuff, you know. Sheila just wasn't doing it twice, so they just missed out on that one, I guess.
Is it right that Waverly Utilities has, since its inception with cable implementation in Waverly, paid the franchise fee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we're getting franchise fees from both MediaCom and Waverly Utilities.
They don't have to, but they're creating a fair playing field.
Well, that's what I was
by paying
remembering.
the
That's
one
why I
against the ones
asked.
that-
Yes. Okay.
I didn't know how to delicately answer that. I say, well, they don't have to, but
Yeah.
they have done that because others have to, they have as well.
Yes.
Told themselves the same accountability.
Yeah.
So why does Waverly Utilities not have to? Is it because it's a city entity?
It's municipal, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So any questions then on a franchise fund as it sits? Jump in local option sales tax. And actually, the first page is a nice summary, but I like the second page, which has more of the history on it. It's the bigger one. We have projected in the local option sales tax, which again, it is kind of a moving target depending on how it goes across the state and for each county associated, and we get our portion of it. This is another one that's based on census. So from what the Bremer County portion is, we take our share based off of population. So that will hopefully go up when census is redone also. We get just over $1 million in a local option sales tax. We do not have any more fire station truck bonds. Those are paid off last year, so thankfully it freed up a little bit. We still have the equipment for emergency response vehicles, police, ambulance. You see there at the start, you have the bond payment, which we were talking at the time, about 60% was going to go to the parkway. And that's about where we're sitting. And then again, we have in alley reconstruction. That's something I want to talk about and see if we continue with that. You have the second balance of Adams Parkway. That's a slight area that'll run over into July. And then you've got the seal coat transfer, which I know we've kind of been talking about seal coat and how that should be. I'm thinking that Adams Parkway, should that all be in fiscal 19? Like, do you anticipate that getting done by June 30th?
Yes, but may not be paid out.
Okay. We'll probably leave it as it sits, and it's 601. It's just fund balance deal, but I just didn't want to make sure that we had it kind of counted as correctly as we could. So again, and then we have, like I said, seal coat is in there as well, leaving still a balance of $270,000 for that year, or the overall going forward. So alley reconstruction, I think, has been a good thing. I know with the downtown project that went through, we had some really nice work done that really helped a lot of the retailers. I'm not sure where we are with the second alley. I'm trying to remember where
That's
the first.
complete.
Is it? Did that get done?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be for this year. Then we do have to identify them for next year if we want to continue with the project. I know there's certainly a couple out there that probably could use that assistance. I think the other one turned out really well. Once we figured out how that tank was kind of sitting there, got that squared away, I think it turned out really well, and I think it's really helped retail having that secondary access point, and it's a lot easier than just gravel and mud back there when it's nice and paved. So I don't know if you have questions, comments, local option.
So are you kind of asking for a head nod that yes, you want, there's agreement to leave the alley project funding in there as well as continuing to use 10% of loss to cover seal coat?
Sure, that's always good to have a head nod. We can take more official action on the 9th. I want to at least introduce it so you can have something to discuss, think about. Because there's going to be a lot of items that we've gone through that I'll try and have a list of what is kind of questionable that we just might need to get a ruling on or a good feel of, or do we move forward or not with it. This would be another one. I'd want to know, your thoughts on seal coating, to continue to take it from here. Otherwise, we have to fund it from somewhere. That's one of them, along with the sidewalk program that we'll touch on when we get to capital projects, that we got to figure out how we're going to do that, because it's a revenue issue for us as we move forward. And then, of course, the 10% roughly for police ambulance. We've been kind of doing that for a number of years as well. Do we continue doing that? And we've always talked about the logic is that our police and our ambulance, as we talked about when they were here, they go far beyond our city limits. So to expect our taxpayers to fund all of that maybe isn't as responsible as trying to pull in local option from everywhere else in the county, since that was at least the reasoning of why it was in here to start with. But whether we continue would certainly be up to council. But But yeah, these are all just things, again, we're just trying to introduce. We can have as much discussion as you like. We just want to make sure that there's something that you can tuck away if it's a point you want to discuss further. Because on February 9th, when we do come back, I think that's when we're going to try and wrap up pretty much everything and to get a good feel going into hearing at least as to where we are as a city.
So if I understand the discussion correctly, if we did not do an alley reconstruction next year, we would be doing more seal coating?
No, not at all. I just want to know if you want to continue with the alleys to be redone. You would just not have $75,000 coming out of local option. You would just have a greater fund balance at the end of the year.
Okay.
Because we're not seal coating the alleys as we speak right now. They're just kind of self-sustaining.
Right, yeah, and I guess that was my question, was if you weren't using that money for alley reconstruction, where would it go?
Just, again, to a fund balance. So if we had an emergency situation, we've had a couple of those in the past, where we finished off a trail, or we've had an area that we could do a piece of infrastructure that ran over. It's just been another possible funding source. But it's a little thinner than it's been. We don't have a lot of balance sitting there because we're trying to utilize it instead of letting it sit. Sure.
Well, I have my 2 cents worth in. I think we need to continue the alley reconstruction project. Okay. Because there are some pretty bad alleys out there that need to be.
There's still a couple looking pretty tough, yeah. I know we're trying to kind of hit both sides of the river, and we've done some of those. And I know the one next to the one we just did is pretty rough too. So there's a handful that we need to probably take a look at when we can actually see them again and kind of see how they come out in the winter and what shape are they in, some of the ones that are concrete right now. The hardest part is, we just did the last one we did behind the diner. A month later, they were cutting it up and busting it up for utilities. I just was sick about it. It was so perfect, and then they were busting it up, chopping it up for a gas line or something. Why? And so it was put back fine. That doesn't always happen. There's a couple alleys on the other side of the street you go back, and it's a little tough. They didn't put them back so nice. We tried to enforce that as much as possible, but you only do so much of that. So yeah, we'll have a final yes, no, and you can always send emails if you have questions or comments or pro, con, whatever it is. We'll try and kind of summarize those up when we get to the 9th. And see if we need to, have kind of a quasi vote or an actual vote. If we need to do that, we'll do that to move forward.
Well, I think the amount of time and material that Brian Sullivan and his crew spend trying to patch these alleys repeatedly during the year, that 75,000, probably half of it, or close to half of it's probably taken up in manpower and material just to maintain what we've got. So I think it's.
I know they were pretty appreciative of the businesses that got concealed in the alleys. It really made a big difference as they tried to work on the rear entrances of their, retail to kind of help foster that. So
I know a number of them who are still working on the old alleys have been asking me when their alleys are going to be done.
Well, yeah, yours got done. I'm sure. That had nothing to do with being on council. It was long before that. Long before that was decided. So, no, I'll plan to leave it as it sits then, unless I hear from other council would like to discuss it further to remove it. But that's one that we'll leave on. And then steel coating, we'll hit that again when we go through capital projects. That has got its own separate capital project fund that we can discuss more at that point in time if that's suitable. So that being the case, let's just jump forward. We might actually be almost out of the slate paper here, which would be good. Nope, hotel, motel.
Hotel, motel.
One more there. Funding from that, we do get a transfer from the general fund. And then a lot of this goes to, Cobblestone has their last payment in another fiscal year after this one or so. They're getting paid back for what they generate. So that's kind of an even wash. We have the chamber contribution. We have some money in for the Waverly Cedar Falls Orchestra wants to come and do a concert this year. They've reached out and said we would like to do a full symphony orchestra concert in the summer outdoors for the city. So we're going to try and assist them with that. We have the Historical Preservation Community, $2,000 in there, it looks like. And then we have our annual for fixing holiday lights. We do have a small transfer in the pro shop, and that's kind of where it sits for hotel motel tax.
So
So for the contract services, okay, there's 1,000 for the Waverly, the Waterloo Cedar Falls Orchestra, 2,000 for the Historical Preservation Society, but it adds up to 4,000. What's the extra 1,000?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, Tab.
Just an extra 1,000 because we had expenses through the years that
Well, we've exceeded that.
usually have to amend, so.
Okay.
In case the orchestra wants to do it twice, maybe. Like it so much, we'll come back and do it again.
Or maybe when they're doing orchestras, we'll have the Warper Community Orchestra and the Waterloo Cedar it's the same night.
We might need a bigger
The
park.
Battle of the Orchestras in the park.
It's not exactly 2 pianos out there, but we could maybe get a bigger park and, well, I kind of like that. It's kind of nice.
So
Yeah,
just,
let me see if we can, well, you won't be here. Write a note, new tab. We need to see about getting some dueling orchestras out there in the park.
He could be the guest conductor. Come back.
Oh, guest conductor. You know how to conduct?
so James, just a quick reminder, hotel motel tax can be used for some things, not for other things. What can it actually be used for?
It's primarily for promoting the city tourism. That's why your chamber does come out of here, since that's kind of their primary goal as well.
Yeah, okay.
But that's the bulk of what it really falls under, is if it can be designated as tourism promotion. So if you have the orchestra come in, tourist grant, come on, get that. The holiday lights, part of our celebrations to bring people in. So it's some of it's a little loose, but it still has fit in the past, so it's kind of stayed there. But it is really for promoting the city through tourism.
Heritage Days doesn't come out of here, though.
No, that's in the Health and Human Services, Health and Social Services area. It could. It's another possibility of funding. I know we've always kind of taken it from there. Certainly could.
The amperage program or thing that we were doing, if we needed some, that would probably fit into this category too.
So if Ragbri came through here again, would that be involved with this impact that, or
It could.
Gentlemen of the
Funding
Road?
could come from here.
Yeah.
I know we've been asked quite a few times if we want to do it again, and I see the looks on your face. No, we don't. Not for a little while yet.
Until we get finished.
Yeah, let's finish up everything else. I know it's in the south this year again, so I can stay down there. But
Ragbri usually tries to be net cost to the communities and that type of thing, so user fees and things like that, try to cover whatever direct costs there are,
So yeah, but if there was a cost associated we needed to cover, this would be another possible source of money. So. Questions, hotel, motel? Really, I think that is the last of our slate gray paper. We've covered the chamber portion as well through the salmon sea paper there. And so if you get your second gray paper.
What's this, excuse me, what's this debt service for the STIF fund?
That's the next chunk of gray paper we're going to jump on.
Oh, okay.
That is the sales tax increment fund.
Very good, thank you.
We did a bond for using sales tax increment funding, and it specifically has to go for this one bond. You have to get actual specific detail to do that, only that. It's not something you do all the time. You have to specifically go after that and designate a certain sales tax for this bond itself. And I'm trying to think, was that Dry Run Creek?
yes.
Oh,
Was done? That was one of the ways that was funded.
Based off of the incremental increase over sales tax, that type of thing.
So the whole purpose of this fund is to pay that bond. And so it comes in, it pays out. We carry a balance here as well. As it continues to see the principal and interest fluctuate through at the end, it'll even out and be zero. So while it's a little balanced now, it'll eventually dwindle once we get further along the bond, and it will zero itself out. But that is the entire purpose of that fund, is to pay that bond. So if sales tax increment comes in, bond payment goes out.
And that was on a 10-year program, so about half, this would put us halfway through.
I believe so. Let me take a quick peek here.
Actually, 11.
11? Okay.
And that's 215B bonds.
Yeah, this is our 5th out of 11 payments. So we'll have 6 more after this. questions then on the debt service sales tax increment? Otherwise, we can jump into one of my favorite funds because I don't understand it at all. Perpetual Care Fund, carrying a $500,000 balance in there, and I don't think we can touch it. That's the one I don't understand. Have you any comment at all on?
It's an irrevocable trust fund that the principal remains in the bank at whatever low interest it is, and we can get transfer of the interest each year to help offset the cost of the cemetery.
So is this, I know we've talked about this before, but I don't remember the answer. Is this, I mean, how did we get into this, and do other cities do this as well, other cemeteries?
There are perpetual care cemeteries and there's non-perpetual care cemeteries, and we've always been perpetual care cemeteries since I've been around.
Why?
Because a long time ago, people would pay their fees to buy a grave space, and part of that, at least 20%, would go toward the perpetual care. So that guarantees them that their grave space would be perpetually cared for forever. That's what perpetual care is.
So if you had a cemetery that could not fund itself going forward, this was to generate enough to make sure it happened.
Interesting.
Back in the high interest days, we were getting over $20,000 a year of interest.
And what are we getting?
I keep on, well, it's grown from like $1,000 to $5,000. I keep on asking Jen to throw some toward the lottery, but that doesn't work.
Where did the money come from originally?
From the people who bought the grave spaces.
Oh.
And we still collect money from.
That goes into this?
It goes into this?
20% of the cost of the grave space.
Yeah. It's nothing we can do to touch it.
This is another one of those examples where there was abuse in this area, and the state legislature stepped in and said that we need to do something to make sure that these cemeteries have funding, even if the cemetery goes bankrupt, that there's money there to provide for the graves. Because there are a lot of, I was involved in this many, many years ago when I was in the trust industry, because there are a lot of private cemeteries, and they would go bankrupt, no longer be in existence, and there was no money to take care of the graves that were in the private cemetery. So that's basically why this is pretty heavily regulated. You can't do anything with that money other than, use it for perpetual care of the cemetery. So perpetual means perpetual. So I don't think you can touch it for anything else.
If they would fund EMS as an essential service, they'd need less graves.
That's like pre-cemetery, though. That's to keep people out of the cemetery.
I think I might put it off for a little bit, but I think people are going to end up in there anyway.
So for some of the curb and gutter work and streets and things, we can't touch this.
That's not considered perpetual care. So it's just maintenance of tombstones and grass mowing and stuff like that?
It's maintaining the cemetery.
We get transfer of the $5,000 that goes into the cemetery budget, which is basically all general fund dollars.
Yeah.
So we can do $5,000 worth of curb work if we wanted to. Right. That goes in the revenues. It does offset that already. Okay. It's already built into it. It's just not designated for that. It's not very balanced. Maybe we should get a bill introduced to let us get into this. It's not that hard to do, apparently. So we can just get that in there and some perpetual care knocked out. Just half, maybe? $250,000? Is that, no? Okay, there we go. Been a tough day. So we'll jump through that. That's a fun topic to hit on. We'll jump through that. And after that is employee benefits, which there's 2 or 3 pages that really is breaking down the FICA, Medicare, whether it's 411, group insurance for each department as you go through. It shows up in a lump sum in its own fund when we look at the tax rate, et cetera. So this is just that fund as a whole. Not a real exciting fund, but still got to cover it with you. But unless there's any questions after that, we jump to the restricted funds, which are kind of the little mini funds that we had that are not really tax supported, but they're through donations. They're some of the community-oriented ones. You see the police have a number of these from the DARE program, Shop the Cop, Tri-County Drug Task Force, the police dog, the cameras for their cars that go through. We have one for community gardens, dog park. There's a very small one for the ball diamonds. Hasn't been a lot of activity in that. It's just carrying a little bit of a balance.
How do we account for the farm ground rent that we get off of the Champions Ridge?
I'm trying to think. That may be actually one of the revenues in the capital fund itself for the ground that we purchased.
I believe
Is that a
it's
good guess?
Fund 350.
How is this?
I mean, it's not that much, but it may be nice to allocate it into this fund so that.
Into restricted?
Just to earmark income being generated off property that we are setting aside hoping for ball diamonds, so.
Yeah, when we jump into capital projects, Fund 341, you'll see the rent in there, and so it's what's helping to generate money for the project itself, Champions Ridge. That's where it sits.
I think I understand all of these funds except Tri-County. What does that do?
I'll let the chief answer that.
Front page.
The Waverly Police Department is part of the Tri-County Task Force, which went from 3 down to 2, Blackhawk and Bremer County. So law enforcement agencies within those are part of a task force, and that's revenue that we get from cases that we work through the task force. So, found money, sale of assets from drugs.
So which county did we lose?
Benton. Oh, I'm sorry,
should
Grundy.
we call this dual county?
Grundy?
Grundy, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to rename it now?
I suppose we could rename that.
Yeah. I guess too many templates, maybe.
Okay, I get it.
Any chance to rename it, Rich? Dual county, bi-county? Just counties, something, I don't know. Deuce, oh, I like that. Deuce counties, that sounds really nice, actually.
And does the public donate to any of these, like to Shop with Cops or the community gardens? And that goes right in. Do you market that very much? Like to the local service organizations, et cetera?
We don't. Trying to think of a couple. The National Night Out one, I actively fundraise for our National Night project, and other than that, I don't really promote the other ones. I know we got a nice donation. I don't know how much you guys want to talk about that, but over the Christmas holiday for Shop the Cop and also Dare. And then
I wonder though if Ann's question isn't coming from that there might be people who'd really be interested in contributing to the community gardens, for example, but they just don't even know about it.
Right.
They could contribute to the community foundation through leisure services, I suppose.
Yeah, we have gotten contributions before, but generally those are all grants we've written and that has funded the community gardens in the past years. We seem to be able to operate on grants. People like to give money to us to raise food for the hungry.
When individuals come in, I said, we'd like to make a donation. I ask them, where would you like to go? And so then I give them the options, to give it to the National Night Out, Shop the Cop, or the Dare, or R-Canine as well. So there's a couple options. People don't look at us much for donations for some reason, but
I think you should market that a little bit, because I know the United Way this Christmas had a big shopping program to adopt families, and that was very popular. And so I bet if you got the word out, you'd have more donations too, if you needed them. So.
Tri-County's donations too, they're just not voluntary.
Right.
They just kind of take that from people, so it's,
lawfully take it.
Some paperwork involved, but it's kind of.
So I'm looking at the budget for the car cameras, and I'm seeing money moving in there, but I'm not seeing money coming out. When is that going to come out?
that is in in my budget that I have in front of me. I believe it's 2021.
Okay.
They're currently a little over 4,500 a piece. So we're using that as a set aside.
A holding place until there's enough money in there to purchase.
Right.
Okay.
So we could get about 3 after this year, and that would be about the right time to rotate out the 3, so.
Okay.
Okay. We have community gardens, dog park, and the ball diamonds. If you have any questions, those 3. None of them carry significant balances. They're just kind of a small fund that we kind of track and run through the books. And then equipment reserve is the fund where a lot of the purchases, when we get to those, whether it be for the police equipment, fire, ambulance, this is where that money is transferred to prior to purchase. So the revenue comes in. As you can see, we have equipment for police, fire, ambulance, our admin vehicles, the copiers we replace, and then you see last year where the expenditures came for the police cars, the fire truck was there, the ambulance, and that's how you kind of spell it out. So it's kind of an intermediary as we put money away to buy these. We're not having to do it all in one lump sum, and then the expenditures hit when we go ahead and purchase. So. No question. The next page would be municipal band and Trees Forever. When we get the National Night Out and the reserve for the W, which again is all Waverly utilities now. We just serve as a pass-through for that. Money in, money out. There is a $30,000 cash balance there I've never quite understood. We need to probably dig into that and see why we're holding that, since it was kind of a pass-through in a sense.
I think I did some research last year and found some information. I'll see if I can pull that out.
Let's try and find that and see if we can't get that figured out.
So Tab, is this Trees Forever fund something that could be used to replace some of our ash trees, or is that not what this is for?
That's what it's for. We get $7,500 from Waverly Utilities every year, and we have gotten a couple grants in the past, and we've used the majority of that to replace the street trees we've been taking down. Last year we did 80 along the street. We're looking at least 80 or 90 this coming year. It's a program where we also get with middle school kids and send them to every corner of the community, and they plant 4 or 5 trees. So it's kind of a double whammy. We get the trees replaced, and the kids get to learn how to plant a tree. 20 years from now, they can drive by and say, I planted that tree.
It might be good to make sure that the community understands that we are actually replacing the trees. A lot of people see them going out, and I think they're getting a little concerned about Tree City not being Tree City anymore.
Yeah, we're about a year behind. In terms of this year, we will cut down probably 100 trees, and they won't be replaced for a year afterwards. So we're about a year behind. We can't replace them as we do it.
Yeah. So what do we? This is off topic. What are we replacing them with? I mean, not going to be ash trees.
There's a Trees for Kids grant that has. Last year we had 17 different varieties of trees that we replaced them with. So it's a variety of different types of trees. I have the list if you want to grab me later on.
Okay.
Biodiversity will protect you from future invasive.
Ta-da.
Yeah. We hope.
Yep.
Are we also going to work with the homeowners along Bramer Avenue with lost trees?
That's a fall project of Trees Forever. They have a couple projects on their own besides the planting of trees with the kids. The fall, the Bremer Avenue trees, as well as we're looking at south on 4th Street to put some trees out along there.
Okay, very good.
We'll take a couple. Well, we lost it. I appreciate the fact that the balance of the fund is going down, that we're using it up. It's not just money sitting there doing nothing.
Okay. Any other questions then on the last couple of funds we have here? Debt service, it's kind of self-explanatory. I won't get into a whole lot of that. It's really a good breakout of the bonds that we have existing. They'll have notations on them, whether they're a local option, TIF, straight GO. And then there's a nice summary at the end of them as well. So it's just kind of a nice look at where we have. Some are paid off, some are about to be, some are going to go on for a while yet. But as I said earlier, our goal was to get everything within 10 years, and I can accomplish that now. So we will be debt-free in 10 years if we don't issue any additional. We can talk about it. It's not likely, but still. Just jumps into capital projects. I don't know if council wants to jump to capital projects, or do we want to revisit the road projects we've done so far? I'll kind of leave it for you for a little direction, because a lot of that's going to be very similar as we try to predict and look at the ones we've already done and accomplished and what we may do going forward.
It's 8:15. How late would the council prefer to go?
So do you want to get some kind of a ruling on the debt a little bit, or the capital for next year, so we can get that process started? So that for sure I'd at least want to accomplish tonight. So we'd be willing to go into that right now then? Get this loaded and see if it'll, I'll try and get it on the big screen, so to speak, see if it'll work. So talk amongst yourselves, let's take a few minutes. Assuming it actually works, which, you know.
I better get out of the road now.
It's probably need like elevator music or something, you know, for the public to listen to. This going here. Oh, resolution. Forgot about that angle.
Yeah, this way you can just get a book out of here. Look at this.
Oh yeah, look at that. This is nice. I don't know if it helps you out much, but but it's there. So anticipating that would be still somewhat poor. Having invested this today earlier, did go ahead and print off a couple scenarios that we had, so a lot easier to read. Follow along. Dig up the chin. That's fine. There you are, sir. Thank you. These are a little easier to read. It's not as fun as watching a clicker on the screen, but still, you can at least see these. Over here. Full color. Copy across and everything.
James, do you think that's focused?
I have no idea. I was glad it just showed up. I was worried it wasn't even going to show up there, so.
That's fine.
Do you think it's focused, Tab?
It's focused on the little screen. Is it on the little screen?
It's up there.
Oh. Maybe that's better. It's not on there. Oh.
So we have to change a resolution to get it to look like that. So.
It's fine. It's okay.
Okay. Tab's gonna see if he can get this focused just a touch.
I don't want to touch it.
I didn't want to touch it either.
It's just. I'll back up.
Well, like I said, we can maneuver it any way you want.
He's gonna change stuff up there.
So if you look at the sheets that I gave you, it's a little easier to read. What you see up there is the kind of where we ended. So what we left at the time was we had in the first phase of Cedar Lane, we had the facade, streetscape, and South Riverside Park. The South Riverside Park was $325. We had $240 in for the streetscape, which was the estimate that they'd given, and $75 for the facade grant instead of the $100 that was in there initially. We also have in the second phase of 20th Street, the 218 business improvement portion of it, then the water main repairs with the traffic study. And that's the last that we had. Now, there was discussion at a public council afterwards. We talked a little bit about the possibility of, can you work the second phase of Cedar Lane in as well? So on that request, worked out a different scenario. The talk was about moving Public Works out 1 year. I know there's some issues with doing that, but that is what the second sheet would show you would be if that happened. So yes, Cedar Lane does fit if that is the case. But again, it pushes out Public Works another year, which is a building we kind of want to get going at some point also. So that was the other scenario that I know was discussed. And if there's other things you want to look at, we can certainly do it on the screen in front of you, or we can run another scenario and print it so you can actually see it. But that's kind of where I'm looking at, is sort of a consensus of this is good enough to go to hearing, just so we can get some not to exceeds in and start getting our paperwork together. So it's still wide open. Anything you want to see, we can certainly do. It's just a little easier now with that all on the screen at least.
So where does the, in what year does the Public Works then get shifted to?
1 year out to fiscal 22 instead of fiscal 21. If you choose that. Right now it's in fiscal 21.
Right.
Unless you shift to move the second part of Cedar Lane up, then it would go to fiscal 22.
This would be bonding for both phases of Cedar Lane in the same budget, and we can accomplish the work on both phases in the same budget?
Well, Mike, I'll have to lean you on that. I know we're bidding out Cedar Lane as it sits now for this construction project season. What would be the time frame for bid completion of the second phase, if that's accelerated forward?
Well, you would bid it in January of 20 with work starting in April. And you're going to hopefully get it finished up by around July 4. Projects don't conveniently finalize out with fiscal years, so, but the majority of the work and expenses would be incurred. We did it in the spring of 21.
That's what we would try to do. We can spend the majority of it, and then if it does go into the next fiscal, we would advance it forward, pay for it at that time. It's really when it's going to start. When can it start? And again, we can put it to the next fiscal year. That's where it starts to get problematic with the cost and going over our self-imposed limits.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud, is some of the thought process there that would become our primary detour when the Main Street Bridge is?
No.
Cedar Lane or Parkway is still our
official detour.
Yeah.
Pardon?
The Parkway would be the official detour.
But officially, yeah, from the state.
A lot of local traffic will take it.
Local is what I'm thinking of, is how do you get them to the downtown? I mean, yes, I believe, my opinion is we need to do the part we're doing now because it's in the worst shape. It would get us into there, but if part of the process of bringing the 3rd Street Bridge into discussion is to try to shed the traffic through 2 different bypasses of the local downtown area. Just wondering the need to push the second phase of Cedar Lane right on the back end of it, that type of thing.
I understand that completely.
Well, also, I mean, if we're comparing these 2 scenarios, it looks like we're talking about Cedar Lane in year 20 versus in year 22.
The second portion.
The second portion.
21 with the other things in there, it just doesn't work.
So that you're talking about a 2-year delay on that second phase of Cedar Lane.
Right. I don't know that we could count on it being done before the Green Bridge would go through, just because of the time that could possibly have. I think it still would be.
Sure.
I still think that it's going to be a little later on the Green Bridge, or not the Green Bridge, excuse me, on the Bremer Avenue Bridge.
Right.
I don't think the state is that good that when they say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I just don't see that as the case. So it could be possible to get that done in the, July, August timeframe. I don't know. Do you have an estimate, Mike, on how long that project may take?
Which project?
The second phase of Cedar Lane.
Well, if you bump the second phase out to FY22, it would be the same position doing it in the spring of, April, May, June of 22.
I don't know, it seems a little awkward to me that you'd do the first phase, then you'd wait 2 years before you do the second phase. I think that's
It's just a funding issue. That's why it came out.
I understand that.
Yep. So yeah, so it would be done then in theory before, the Green Bridge would be finished and this other bridge would be done. It would be done before that. They would be going on at the same time, which would not be an issue. Obviously, they're not related to each other, but yeah, they still would be done.
The thing we don't want to do is be working on Cedar Lane at the same time in 21 that we're rebuilding First Street by Coleman Park. I'll have no way to get home.
So
We won't have any way to get home.
Okay, that's that First Street Northwest reconstruction.
Right.
Pete, you want to step up to the mic,
Fiscal
please?
21 is when that would happen then.
And when we do Cedar Lane, are we anticipating that one lane will be open for traffic during those projects, or
I don't know if that's
not necessarily?
I think so. We're local access only on
Only,
these
okay.
sections of Cedar Lane that will.
There's a big difference in the what you've got for a roadway on Cedar Lane. From Brown Lane down here to 2nd Avenue is the original sub-base, basically, which was never done quite right. From Brown Lane on around, when the sewer and water project was done, there was new sub-base and that road was redone at that point. So there's a difference in the quality of the roads from those two sections, which breaks good with Brown Lane down to 2nd, or down here to 2nd Avenue.
I just don't want us, if we're really serious about considering a new 3rd Street Bridge, I don't want to try and have 3rd Street Bridge and the second portion of Cedar Lane
at the same time.
Going at the same time, because it isn't going to work.
Bremer Avenue will be open, though.
Not in fiscal 23. Well, just depends. So timing is everything.
Yeah, Cedar Lane would be done before this bridge would be out. So we still have Bremer Avenue open while the bridge is being going, and that would be going. So they could exist together in construction. I think it is possible.
I know there's real good reasons to have the Public Works building done as quickly as we can. There's some real need for that, but I guess I kind of agree with Brian at this point that with Cedar Lane, it makes sense that if we're doing it, that we try to get it done. I know it'd be over 2 years, but that we get it done as quickly as we possible and then be done with it, and we've got Cedar Lane finished. Rather than start it, then have a year where nothing happens, and then start the second section. I think there's some advantages to getting the project done. Get it started, get it done, get it over with, and move on to something else. Especially with with the Bremer Avenue Bridge issue being in there, it would make some sense, even though I know that the second part of Cedar Lane is constructed much better than the south part, that we have that completely done and scratched off the list. That's probably not a real good reason. I mean, when you're thinking about it from a logical standpoint, it probably doesn't make that much difference, but just trying to balance what the priorities are. And they're really two completely different projects, and both of them to me seems to have very similar levels of priority. And I think if I were living out in that part of town, I would want to get the street done and be finished with it rather than have part of it 1 year and then a couple years later do it again, do another part. I think getting it done as quickly as possible over 2 construction periods and have it done, to me, makes a little bit more sense.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have real. That's not something that I'm really strongly committed to. I could very easily change my mind.
I understand it completely, and if we could have bid them together, I think that's an absolute way we could go. That's what makes it harder, because you really can do either now. It's just kind of wherever the premise is, and this is what makes this difficult. There is a lot of compelling reason for each of them, and it comes down to what blend or what mixture of projects do you want to see the most. Initial bond is less with Cedar Lane staying separate, but it just makes it a little more later, so it's really not, it's really not a huge advantage if you try to look at out total 3 years, 3 to 5 years, which is what we try to do with this. In the end, you're still going to pay for it somewhere. So yeah, like I said, it's where council sits. We just have to get some consensus in a sense of how much we're going to go into hearing with.
Well, I also feel like the Cedar Lane project is something we've been talking about for many years, and it's been pushed off many times. So it doesn't break my heart to make it a priority, because I think it's been a back burner issue for so long.
Remind me again what are the key features of the second phase of the Public Works facility?
So the north wing is actually where the street department is to be housed. The street department presently is occupying the space that is supposed to be for water and sewer line maintenance. This was a similar discussion that was occurring in 2011, 2012, 2013. It was push it off, push it off, push it off. I can't imagine going back to the old facility with inadequate equipment services, with doors that aren't wide enough, tall enough, stalls that aren't deep enough. We've been able to make adjustments in our operations. I showed you the chart how the infrastructure, the streets, the solid waste collections have continued to increase, and yet our personnel have not. It's because we were able to make adjustments with equipment, that we're getting more versatile equipment, getting larger equipment now because of our capabilities. So it's very convenient and easy to push it off, to delay it. But those issues and inefficiencies are going to continue to be there until that next phase is. They're just going to be in other areas that a lot of the public doesn't see. Water and sewer line maintenance. With our new WPC facility, we're going to lose the maintenance building out there. Where are we going to house the jet machine? As it is now, we're going to have to figure out what do we do for at least a year, and if we delay it, it'll be even longer than that. Where do we house it? What do we do with it? We have office facilities out there that we can't utilize because the water and line maintenance equipment there's no room for it. It's housed here. We can't put staff 2 miles away from their equipment. That doesn't change until that final phase is done. We have $1 million of the project set aside. There's an additional $2 million to finance. There are challenges on how do we do that. Not only from a capacity standpoint, but we're looking at doing a GO bond issue that is rebated by some water, some solid waste revenues, but there are still challenges with how do we generate enough revenue to make our bond payments. So I'm not obviously I'm not really in favor. We've already kicked it a year. It was supposed to be done in 2020. We weren't able to do that because we had the Bremer Avenue project, and we need to issue $1.6 million in water revenue bonds in order to pay for 2.5 miles of new water main on Bremer Avenue. We had no control over the timing of that project, so we were forced into that situation where we had to delay the public services facility for a year. It comes down to choices. And unfortunately, you know, the decision may be to delay that. If that's the case, we're going to have to make additional adjustments. So it may delay other initiatives that we want to undertake as well. So,
what would be an alternate storage space for the, what is it called?
The jet vac machine,
yes.
Which is a very large piece of equipment, very, very large. I don't know yet. I don't know.
James, could you remind me again how the split on the facade and the streetscape is dollar-wise?
Yeah. The streetscape, the estimate that we had at the meeting we were at was $240, $238. That's what I have in there is $240. The park that's in there was $325 for the second phase of South Riverside Park, and we have $75 in for the facade grant, which would be a matching grant for businesses. So it'd give them up to $150,000 in funding, 75 from us, 75 from their own pocket. And that's all just as it was presented. You can certainly adjust those any way you'd like to.
Again, I'm starting to wrestle with not only the priorities and the price tag of some of the projects, it's when we get into our discussion in a week or 2 weeks, how that affects the ask that we have for. Yep. So, one thing, maybe it's the wrong way to look at it, but sometimes look at if I can take a nickel off of the ask, what does that amount to type thing. So I don't know if you spent any time talking about that.
$20,000 is what it would take to take a nickel off the levy. Non-debt. Debt, it's, like I said, it'd be $100,000 takes a quarter off. So it's about the same. Roughly, but that's debt payments. So you have to cut your payment down, so reduce your debt a couple $100,000 over 10 years or whatever it might be.
I'm just thinking, streetscape, yes, we need to finish that. It seems like when you look at the amenities that are being planned, there may be an opportunity to work with the chamber to do some naming donation type things where a family would buy a planter or a bench, so I'm just wondering, again, looking for those nickels, can we shave that down a little bit as we go forward in some of our conversation, and then some other places to start looking at.
If you take $50,000 out of it, unfortunately, over 10 years, it's only $5,000, and it's a penny. That's the hard part on the 10-year compilation. That's the hardest part of it. Yeah, I fully intend that when we can meet in February to have a list of things that we can remove if need be, the impact, the amount. We're still going to look at, backfill. How comfortable are we with that? Taking the entire thing out. Look at half of that instead, which my gut says they're not going to take the entire thing. I want to be ready if they do, but with the governor having it funding 100%, I don't think you want to upset the governor that much, but that was a promise, but I think half will definitely be gone. I don't know if it'll be the whole thing or not. We'll see how that lingers out. That's something we could hedge against. So we'll have a lot of those things, and I'll work with Jennifer to see where can we not to get those nickels and dimes, and what does that look like. But and even tonight, all I'm looking to do is just get a not to exceed. It's not committing us to issuing at all. It's just getting a hearing there that we will not exceed above this, and then you can still adjust as we move forward. Up until the hearing itself, March 4th, we can still adjust. We'll just have to have some hearings set, and then you can go that far as well. So any of that trimming can occur after the fact, absolutely. Just want to get this in. Basically, let me take a quick calculator here. Because in this scenario, we're issuing about 3.4 million. If you do move the second phase up for Cedar Lane, moves it to 4.4. So it's a matter of 3.4, 4.4. That's what you would be issuing based on these two scenarios. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to go in at 4.4. And of course, no, you're not going to possibly issue that. That's our not to exceed number. And again, I would not be pushing this at all if we didn't work short time to get hearings in place so that we can not pay a 10-year bond off in 11 years. Our whole goal is to get the hearings so we can make that first payment December, next June, and knock out that first 10% right away. So.
And with 4.4, where are we then in the capacity?
We still have $250,000 on top of that yet.
I mean, I certainly understand the thought process behind the second phase of Cedar Lane. I just wrestle with, is that a valid enough reason to put the public works second phase out another year, those type of things.
Sure.
And, knowing what folks, how they suffered through 2 construction seasons on Bremer, I don't know if I lived up in that area, if I wouldn't appreciate a year's break between the two of them. So it's tough.
I understand.
Well, they'll be able to go south, you know.
I know it's a hard decision to wrestle with. Is there anything else I can provide you to help? I'll do it. I'm not sure what else to. This is kind of where we're teetering between the two.
I suppose there was one thing that was mentioned is the First Street Northwest construction.
Yep.
That we don't want to be doing that at the same time as the second phase of the Cedar Lane.
Yep. The good thing is we can't because it doesn't fit in the same year. So.
So how would things change if we say move that First Street Northwest construction to year 20 and move the Cedar Lane second phase back to 21?
I don't think you can.
We have
state
federal money involved, so we're really
so we're
kind of anchored in the summer of 21. Now, you could do Cedar Lane and First Street. It's not the end of the world. It's just that it kind of has the feel that that entire area of town's tore up, but logistically it can be done. It could be. So I guess I don't want to be quoted as saying it can't be done. It just would not
be very unpleasant.
Yeah.
You could do it back to back. You could do it. I mean, it is all possible. As Mike said, it's just not ideal. It's
because the intersection with Brown Lane and Cedar Lane will be totally rebuilt. So everyone up in the Murphy addition is going to have to come in past City Hall here to access it. And we're still going to make accommodations for the Nestle truck traffic and everything to get up and around using 4th Street and 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue to get up and around the work zone. So it can be done. It's not impossible.
And right now, really, Cedar Lane, you're looking at the second phase, either 20 or 22. We really can't even do it in 21 unless we really shift some things around. So we have the DOT payment for Bremer, the second one in there. And again, depending on what you do Public Works, you still have 4th Street sitting right there too, DOT coming. I hope we can even delay that, as I've got it delayed into July, hopefully just to make it to that fiscal year. So there's a lot of pushing and hoping to make this work the first time through this puzzle. It's just it's the best we can come up with, and still trying to accomplish some of the projects we have, to finish some of these areas, to still get some amenities, to start to look ahead at the alternate routes, all in response to the bridge being taken out and replaced.
Right. Well, Mike makes a compelling argument for getting the Public Works, second phase of Public Works building done sooner rather than later. And I think there can be something to be said for having a little bit of a breathing space and not having 2 construction years in a row. As, you know, we ended up with 3 construction years really with Bremer Avenue. Having a breathing space there would have, and I know those are commercial properties, not residential properties, so that's a little different story, but you know, the part that of Cedar Lane that is really desperately in need of work is the part that would be done, and that would solve a great many problems. And if people know that the second phase is on the horizon and is not going to be something that might be kicked down the road a decade, I'm hoping they would understand that. So for me, it's a really close issue. I guess if we had to vote on something, I would probably change my mind on this and say, well, probably the second phase of the Public Works is really a higher priority to get done faster. If Cedar Lane, if the other part of Cedar Lane had been in as bad a shape as the south part, I think that there would be no question that we would need to get both of those things done as quickly as we can. But I think it is not going to be disastrous to push it off another year.
It is definitely wider, as Pete said. It is a better base. You can drive it and know it. I mean, it still should be done, but it is a little wider. It's a little easier to plow. It's not quite as pinned in with the limestone mountain sitting there that you can't really get into.
No, it needs to be done. There's no question, but you know, I could probably wait a year. You know, the thing is, you always say, well, we don't want to pin our own house while our neighbor's house goes bare, and partly, you know, doing something to complete the Public Works building is to a certain extent, you know, spending the money on ourselves as a city administration rather than on the citizens of the city. But the flip side of that is the public administration building is servicing the citizens of the city. And, you know, we need to have that facility to properly service our citizens also. It's been put off for a while. I understand that, and you know, I think there are some compelling reasons to go ahead and do that as quickly as we can, and not put it off any farther.
That'll help us build that into a brewery/tap room, which will definitely service it.
Brian won't have so far to go to walk after the meetings.
Exactly. A place for Brian to go. I mean, it's win-win-win all the way around. So.
Yeah, I think if it'll make providing services to citizens more efficient and more cost-effective, and definitely we're going to run into a problem with that wastewater treatment facility and losing storage. I don't live out in the Brown Lane area, Cedar Lane area, but I guess I've always envisioned that project being done in 2 phases in separate construction years, and I don't know where I got that impression, but so it doesn't really bother me, especially since they will have a route to get south to town, because that intersection will be changed to divide it and put Public Works first. I think it's not easy to kick anything down the road, because all of these are important projects. But it's so much about timing, and so I think I don't really have a problem with scenario number 1 that you had up there with finishing the Public Works building first, because I do think it's going to help provide better service.
I heard 2 people say what I've been thinking. Thank you for saying it, so I don't have to. I don't understand the thing about letting your neighbor's house go unpainted, though. What is that about? Is that a parable?
It's got to be in the Bible somewhere, isn't it?
The Apocrypha, perhaps.
So consensus-wise, my hearing is just leave out the second phase of Cedar, and then we'll get Public Works in 21, and just, as we said, I'll go to Spirit the 3.4. I'm going to go there, recalculate what that payment could be. It may have been your first dime. I may have found a dime there. I don't know. We'll
so I have a question, which might be a dumb question, but so the available self-imposed money, which is the 1.2.
Right.
So you're saying we still have capacity to spend that on projects, or do you not recommend that? Or because I'm looking at this list that's down here below.
Yep.
And not to say that we want to do all of that, but
What I want you to look at is fiscal '22, which is only $262,000.
Well, right.
So we're taking 10% off. There's a little bit that could go, but it's not. In fact, I'll tell you exactly how much.
So I guess my question is, let's say you decided to do one of the projects listed below. Is that a one-time, for instance, $315,000 expenditure, or is that?
Well, if we add just a couple $100,000 to that, you see it takes us down to just 100 in 2 years, assuming we only have a 1% growth in value, which we'd like to think will be more.
Okay, just because of the upcoming expenses.
We have to look 3 to 5 years out. That's where we got pitched the last time. So yeah, we have 1.2 million.
That's the beauty of the magic
still,
screen, is you can look at that.
There you go. So yeah, you can still do another project, a smaller one there. No more than a few $100,000, I would hope, just because again it does start to get a little tighter.
Okay, it's too tight.
A couple years. So
gotcha.
You know, you have
so
the trail
extension. So it looks luxurious, but it's really not.
Those middle three, any of those you can still do if you wanted to. If you want to get the dome out, the water main, PRV, the trail extension, all that's possible. Port Road, that's a little tougher. That's a little too much. And then you get down to 29th. But yeah, those are still possible if we really want to try to do those.
Or you just leave yourself a cushion.
Yep. Because again, that 22 is what really started to look, because that's when Green Bridge comes in.
Right.
It's possibly in 22. Now, if that's delayed to 23, because say they don't get it started. And I'm trying to remember fiscal year-wise, because we were thinking winter of 22, they may kick that in? Or was it spring of 23?
They have it programmed in FY23. They're talking about bidding it in January 23 with work starting in April of 23.
For the Bremer Avenue Bridge.
Right. I think that whole schedule has to be revisited because they're going to have to be getting down in the river.
Yeah.
So either they need to advance it so that work starts in October of 2022, or they need to have construction delayed until October 23, because you don't want to get down in there until you know you got predictable river levels. But again, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of planning, and work that has to be done. I think their schedule was to, by the end of this year, end of 19, to have a consultant on board to begin the design work. This is a tough project.
And I think you said the other day that the city will only have to bear the cost probably of the sidewalks. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We won't have to bear the price of the bridge construction.
Right. And so any like enhancements, if you want to make this a really signature bridge of the community and really put something into it, we're probably going to be sharing or contributing almost 100% of that cost. The pedestrian ways, we're be prepared to pay for upwards of 100% of that. So
I'm not saying it definitely will happen, but that's going to be discussed. It's just it could happen. That would be our
But we aren't going to
portion.
be paying for a bridge.
Yeah. I'd rather not pay for the entire middle of it. Sidewalks just fine. So, but if that was the case and you push that out yet another year to 23, in theory, it opens up more room for these small projects now, but that's a lot of maybes and theories, and it just, I think we've got, like I said, traffic study in there. We've got a lot of the water main work all in there. We still have a few others that would have been nice, but again, it's not by any means the end of the world if we don't get to those this year.
Just maybe trivial, but just to help us maybe start to form a different mindset, could we change the labeling on the Green Bridge to 3rd Street Bridge?
Yep.
So that we don't constantly go back and think about the Green Bridge?
Oh, that looks so much nicer. That's nice.
I just think it'll help a lot of people maybe realign their thinking as we continue to talk about
the Harmon Street Bridge.
Well, actually, it's
Harmon Street, yeah.
I don't know
southeast.
Southeast.
Yeah, 3rd Street.
3rd Street.
Southeast.
These are all, large, high-level, projects. I guess I just want to make sure, and this might be a discussion for later, but is there anything, or are there any items, I was just trying to think myself without going back and reading through everything, of the departmental presentations that had a pretty hefty price tag to them, where if we're talking about $100,000, some of those departmental budget items might start to need to be considered, as well as these capital items.
Well, no, everything that we've talked about is currently in. The only thing that is not in is the communications director positions. We didn't know how much, we didn't know where to put it, we didn't know what to do with it. That's not in. We still have the sidewalk program to talk through, which we'll do in the capital projects. That's 6 figures. That may be another, we're going to work out some seal coat. Where's that come from? So there's still a handful of smaller things probably in that range, possibly. But most of what was discussed, from capital equipment to staff and issues and positions, it's all in that tax rate as it sits. And again, we trim that down some. We'll certainly take a look at that, but that's all in. We are looking at GIS, and I know we're looking at trying to plan that in. There's been talk about, do you want that accelerated? That's another chunk of money. We're still trying to figure out how much that could be, but we do have a plan in a year or so to get that slid in, but again, it's how aggressive do you want to get. So just a handful of things we'll still need to hammer out, but for the most part, what you've heard is already in.
I guess from my perspective, and for what that might be worth at this point in our conversations, if this isn't including the communications director, I think that should still be up for discussion. And that probably by the time you add benefits and, you're going to be, you could be approaching $100,000. I mean,
80 to 100 is an estimate for that. It's just, what does it do? Where does it sit? Where does it live? And unfortunately, we can't buy for that position. It's a position, but still, it'll be something we'll have to factor in. So yeah, it's still something that we plan to have discussed. We just didn't know when the appropriate time was. I pulled some job descriptions from other communities that have that current positions and similar positions. I can certainly get that to you this week and get those sent out to you to start to review as well. Because the hardest thing will be if you go forward to that position, 1, how do we pay for it? 2, what's it going to do? And can we do it in-house with the staff we have? Can we designate a person to do that portion, to walk into it somewhat, see if it works or not? It's just a lot of those scenarios that we'll have to kind of talk about and see where do you want to go.
I mean, and I guess I'd throw out there too for consideration, I don't know what you have in mind, which positions you've looked at, but there might be a way to combine communications and marketing.
Like the amperage marketing we're talking about, or?
Well, I mean, I think there are positions. I mean, first of all, I think conceptually the two work together, right? I mean, the most powerful is if you have an integrated marketing and communications strategy. Yeah, thanks. So is it possible to find a person or to develop a position description that would combine those two, so that we would, yes, communications is important, but so is how we're marketing the city, and to have somebody who has primary responsibility for taking the lead on that. Now that doesn't mean you wouldn't use somebody like Amperage necessarily, although maybe you could use them less, but you'd have a person who would be the lead person on those marketing and communications initiatives. I mean, just something to think about.
I can see if there's places that have just marketing people as well, and see if there's a hybrid that can exist.
So Edie, is that the model at Wartburg, or is that what they do?
Yeah, I mean, we have more than one person. It's not a one-person shop,
but that's
which
what
makes
they do
a
in the
difference.
department.
But the two are definitely in one department, and they work together.
That seems to work pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, okay, so you're in my field area now. So, yeah, and so the way that communications is becoming digital, the line between those two things, between marketing and communications, is blurring.
Yeah.
And they're often fulfilling the same function from the same actions. And so there is a lot of synergy you can get from putting those two positions together. Be happy to talk to you about it sometime. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've struggled with this. I definitely think we need to be able to market the community. As we've discussed the communication piece of it, in the strategic planning, it was, we need somebody to counter the negative messaging that's going on in the community, that type of thing. And the more I think about that as a standalone piece of what would justify this, I think it's been proven over and over, no matter how much correct, factual information you put out there, some people will just not use it, counter it, those type of things. I don't know if that's a battle you ever win, so I don't know that I would want to bring someone on hoping that they could overcome that mountain. Now, can they hopefully over time get the community feeling that they're getting better, more factual information quicker, less? Yeah, I would hope so, but I'm cautious that we don't set our sights on they're going to solve the negative aspect that goes on in the community as far as communication, the style it's done under, and those type of things. So.
I guess I don't really see their prime purpose as countering negative. I see it as helping the city have a cohesive message that is delivered in a timely fashion. Press releases, communication with whether it, all types of media and the digital presence, and helping us have a website that is more user-friendly, that combines marketing plus information distribution and a central spot for citizens to ask questions. We do have that to some degree. People don't seem to know about it, but we have that. But
some know about it really
yes,
well.
Yeah. But that's what I heard the message coming out of strategic planning was that people felt like they were getting mixed messages or whatever. And so it's I just see it as that is part of what we need that position for, but so much more, because you aren't going to reach everybody, but you're going to reach a large portion of the population just by giving accurate facts in a user-friendly way that goes both directions. So.
Okay.
Yes, if we're talking about the communications position tonight, I've struggled with that over the last few days also. I guess my concern with it is that when I see organizations that have a full-time communications director, they tend to be larger and more complex organizations than what we have here in the city. And I'm just wondering, even though I am convinced that there's a strong need for something like that, if jumping into having a full-time communications director, might be kind of a large step for us, that we may be better off trying to take this in baby steps first. And I'm not sure what that would look like, but do this in smaller increments with some things that we know we need to have assigned to someone to handle our communications. And then if that works out, then we continue to grow that position. And that might be a part-time staff position. It could be a contractual position with someone who's not staff. It could be a combined position with communications and marketing. That could take a lot of different, that could look a lot of different ways. But I guess I'm a little concerned with all of the things that we're laying on our budget, and then to lay on a full-time communications director when we don't really have any experience with how that position is actually going to operate for us might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit.
I think the first thing to do is to explore what other cities do and figure out a job description and figure out how could they serve Waverly's needs and how many hours per week do you estimate that would take? I do think the city's a complicated system. And when I think over the last year of the things that took time for me as a council person to figure out, they all had to do with communication. And that many of them were preventable with more coherent, streamlined communication coming from the city.
A strategy.
Rather
than reaction.
Not that this person would take over communicating for people, but could give guidance and could help the message be uniform. And so I agree. We don't want to rush it, right, just because we have a budget deadline. But I also think it's worth exploring and getting information from other cities that have used them successfully. And we'll get the argument, well, we're not big enough to need one. Well, I don't know that it has to do with city size. And maybe we need to be out front on this.
And it was one of the key topics. It was one of those
strategic planning
of the strategic plan as well. Communications was, I forget how it was articulated, but it was
maybe
right at the heart of efficient, effective communication.
Less confusing. So maybe it won't end up in this year's budget, but I think we can get a good start on designing it and looking at our needs so that if it doesn't fit this year, we're ready to go and sort of know what we want and why we want it.
Yeah, and don't misunderstand me that I'm convinced that there is that need. Mm-hmm. I'm fully supportive of that. I guess I'm not sure that our first step is to hire a full-time communication director for this next year's budget. That's the only concern that I have.
We have a resource within the community, and that's the hospital. They made the move to marketing communications director there a year or two ago at least, and Heidi is well versed in how that came about and everything. So I think it's very, very, and I'm sure she'd be glad to give us their insight as to how and why that came about.
I mean, and part of, I think, what needs to go into our thinking and talking about this is we're already spending something on this. Mm-hmm. We're spending the time that Ann mentioned, staff time, amperage, if you include marketing in it. And, we're already using some resources. So, is that the most efficient way, or would we be better off with a part-time or full-time person who specializes in that kind of thing?
And it's so hard to put a value on that, and all these projects are important, and you can see a street when it's done.
Right.
It's hard to wrap your arms around good communication and what that brings you as a city.
Remember, a county supervisor many years ago told me when I was on the mental health board, if we could just paint yellow on it, everybody would be in favor of buying it. Because it's a thing. It's a thing, not a concept.
Yeah.
Well, in the interest of what's going on, and we've kind of branched out into another avenue for further discussion.
Maybe one more thing, if I could, Mayor. The whole, do we include any of the backfillers, don't we? To me, that seems to be maybe a critical path right here. I mean, I'm fully supportive of putting half of that back in there. Again, I think I'm along the same lines with James. Will they take it all away from us in 1 year? I don't think so.
It's pretty hard because while we're a few $100,000, like I said, where I was prior, it was over 1.2 million, and that's a small. I mean, there's going to be millions lost in this across the state.
And if it ends up, again, it's not that large of a number. If it ends up not being funded, we certainly have the fund balance to cover it, that type of thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't like it, but we could take that hit. I just can't believe. And again, we'll talk to some different people that actually trust out the state. There's not very many to give me a good read on what's happening, because everybody has their own position, their own what they're trying to accomplish. But there's a handful that are truly more inside that will give a good, this is what we're hearing. I think the governor having it fully funded did help some of that. Had that not been the case, I'd have thought it's over, it's gone. That helps me think there'll be some.
I'd
I
rather
just
not
can't see a
depend.
complete elimination.
I'd rather not depend on any of it and be pleasantly surprised if we got some.
I think we'll be pleasantly surprised if we do get any of it, but I do think there's a possibility of it. Again, we want to be as corrective as we can, but not react too hard, because it does have an impact on this total budget as well. I mean, it's $100,000 is nothing to sneeze at. That's what we're trying to cover. That's your communication director, $100,000, and that's really kind of how you put it in perspective. So, and we'll dig really hard into that down the state and try and get a good feel of what is happening or where that sits.
When do we find that out?
June. I mean, it could be that late. It's been that late before. But we'll have an idea of where priorities are and if it's being looked at or not. Because later in the session, they're going to scramble for looking for money to cut too and to fund things as well, same as we're doing now. They'll be looking at the same thing, just in a lot more zeros. And that's going to be a bullseye. When it comes to school funding, I'd always predicted, 5 years ago, it'll come down to school funding and backfill. And we can't not fund the schools. Well, we just have to take that away. And that's still on that path, and we'll see. But I hope not. But I think it's where you're going to see it. So.
Very good. We have a couple items to finish up on the study session. Reports from boards and commissions. Library Board of Trustee minutes from December 11th, 2018. Received into record. Creamer Waverly Law Board minutes, January 14th, 2019. Received into record. Staff comments.
I think we've said a lot. I think we're wore out right now.
City Council comments.
I'll be at the beach house for beer, even no matter how cold it is.
It's dedication right there.
There'll be a cold beer.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm going through this tonight. My dad, he spent his last 20 years in his career as a project manager for the city of Columbus. And his job was literally to manage all those big capital projects for a big city. And so it kind of gives me some insight. I want to call him and talk to him about it. Be like, man, you had some really hard things to take care of. Yeah, and so I appreciate it. And the marketing communication stuff, that's exciting. Got that there. So
appreciate
thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time and your comments, Will. So best of luck to you on everything you're going to do. The only comments I have is to the public to be cognizant of the weather and stay warm, be safe, and
school's already been canceled.
Keep your pets inside.
Next 2 days.
Is it next 2 days?
Yeah. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Motion made.
I'm sorry, but I didn't hear who moved it.
She moved, I seconded.
All those in favor of adjournment, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? We are adjourned.